Excited for the final panel of Industry Day. We are talking about onboarding institutions. So we'll just take a minute and introduce our panelists. So first up, we have the CEO of 21 Shares, Hani Rashwan. Welcome, Hani. And next, the co-founder and managing partner of Nexo, Kellen Metodiev. Welcome, Kellen. And third, we have the Senior Director, Treasury and Investor Relations for MicroStrategy, Shirish Jajodia. Welcome, Shirish. And finally, he's a well-known guy in the industry. He's Director of Growth Marketing for Kraken. Welcome, Dan Held.
All right. So I'm very excited today to talk about onboarding institutions with this fantastic panel. And back in 2017 or 2018, Mike Novogratz said, the institutional herd is coming. Is the herd here? What stage are we in right now in terms of institutional adoption? You want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. So should I start with my introduction first?
Sure.
So yeah, I'm from MicroStrategy. I'm responsible for the Treasury and Investor Relations function in MicroStrategy. Prior to that, I come from investment banking and capital markets experience for over a decade, and I kind of bring all that, and I'm seeing firsthand at MicroStrategy of what the institutions are doing. So MicroStrategy is so it's a leading software business analytics company, and it's the largest corporate holders of Bitcoin in the world. And we are the first publicly listed corporate to adopt Bitcoin as our core treasury reserve asset. So we are kind of leading the way in this, and we see more and more adoption happening. I would say, when I look at the public company and lot of public corporates, the top concern for the executives currently is inflation post-pandemic, and how do they deal with the cash sitting on their balance sheet and which is kind of melting away. So one stat is currently the US corporates hold over $4 trillion of cash on their balance sheet, and means that needs to be addressed. I see an increasing number of mentions in public companies' earnings calls about Bitcoin. That's an indicator. And one thing I would say is I see an increasing number of research analysts at the bulge bracket investment banks popping up and starting dedicated, focused research desks focused on Bitcoin and crypto research. So that makes me believe that the institutions are now waking up, and we are kind of at an inflection point for likely a massive institution adoption.
Really appreciate the insight there. And yeah, sorry, I should have introduced the folks in terms of what their roles are, but if, Colin, if you want to go ahead and give a brief introduction, then I'd love to hear your perspective on this.
Sure, thanks, Dan. My name is Kellen Metodiev. I'm a co-founder and managing partner at Nexo. We are mostly known in the ecosystem for being the largest retail-oriented crypto-backed lender. But the reason I'm being here is because we do have quite a substantially sized operations on the institutional side. We have been engaged in OTC trading, for at least 3 years, and we also have, to some degree, secretly been building our prime brokerage platform. I actually have the pleasure and the privilege today to make a formal announcement. As of today, formally, we're rolling it out. It's a complete platform for institutions, from various asset managers and hedge funds, trading on it. It's a smart order routing system with access to 20 exchanges. We have advanced order placement, fixed interest rate margin, which is quite important. It has been asked by the community. We have delivered. We're quite excited, obviously, about the volumes, that we have been generating for the last few months in our beta mode. So, now that it's officially out, of course, we'll be happy to continue working with all institutions in the space. And just to address Dan's question directly, yes, the institutions definitely have an interest in the space. I think that the herds coming into the space, it still sounds a little optimistic. It's definitely not a pack, but it's not a herd just yet. I would say it's somewhere in between. And the reason for that is that obviously the space delivers a lot of promises. Obviously innovation and economic perspectives are amazing, and this is why all of us are involved in this industry, but at the same time, it still has a lot of shortcomings, and I'm sure we'll address a number of them today. But just to sort of outline, obviously risk management protocols, KYC, AML practices, all of these risks that institutions do not and will never accept. I mean, institutions are good at managing risks that they know how to manage, risks that they can accept, non-market risks. As long as they, permeate the industry, institutions will mostly sit on the sidelines and just kind of, dip their toes and, wait for the temperature to become, more suitable.
And then finally, Haney, would love to hear your perspective and also a little bit of background on you and your company.
Absolutely. So I'm Haney Rashwan. I'm one of the co-founders of 21 Shares, which is the world's largest crypto exchange traded product provider. They're like ETFs, ETPs, ETCs, and all the like. I would say the institutions are here. We'd have to talk about what kind of institutions are investing in this space today, but of our AUM, we would predict 85% of the funds are institutional. They're family offices and less corporate treasuries and the like. Obviously, MicroStrategy is a very early adopter of this, but I would say the institutional herd is coming. It is very obvious. They're engaged, they're ready, they're preparing. Certain ones, like family offices, which may have less of a hurdle on investing, there's less of an investment committee and all of those various procedures that should be in place. And they're here with a vengeance, especially on the family office side, and everyone else is dipping their toes. But we remain excited, and the way we will go from 2 trillion to 10 trillion is very clearly institutions.
Really appreciate that perspective. And I want to start with Colin this time. Colin, what were some of those hurdles that you see? Because I think you brought up a few of those. What are some of the hurdles that prevent institutions from getting into Bitcoin?
Again, institutions, obviously have been managing money for hundreds of years, literally in the traditional financial sector. And in the traditional financial sector, obviously there are also a lot of deficiencies. Otherwise, there wouldn't be such an interest to our industry. There's a lot of things that we are helping to resolve. But at the same time, there is an infrastructure that exists and has existed for a while that institutions feel comfortable with. So, for example, when it comes to, let's say, payments, settlements, custody, there are no surprises. And again, in our industry, everybody loves, the returns. Everybody loves, the potential of, let's say, 10x capital gains or 20% current income rates, but at the same time, we read literally every other week, how a protocol was hacked, and let's say 600 million was stolen, and this isn't something that institutions would accept. And I remember, speaking with, investment banks, early in my corporate finance and investment banking career, and talking to more experienced bankers, and they were saying, something at that time that has stuck with me throughout my career, that, for the most part, institutions are interested of, achieving, let's say, 6, 8, 10% return over, a few billions of dollars, as opposed to, let's say, thinking how they can make, 20, 30, 50% on 10 million, and unfortunately, this is also another thing, that is still, not entirely, settled. For this institutional herd, to come and, for us to reach 10 trillion, this infrastructure needs to be in place. There needs to be liquidity. There needs to be, trading turnover. There needs to be fairness in pricing. There still seem to be, some price points on certain exchanges, that feel out of place, quite frequently. Those are not just let's say, once a year outlier, but especially, when the market goes, very quickly in one direction, up or down, you see that, let's say there are derivatives, prices, for example, just get completely out of whack. Institutions have very difficult time, reconciling, whether this is, fair and transparent prices. So again, with all the institutions we work, with, they love the space, they want to, be there, and we do our best to accommodate their entrance and their permanent stay. But my message, is that we absolutely, all of us, have to work harder to make sure that we even the playing field and everybody feels like they have the equal competitive advantage in it.
Appreciate that. And on the corporate side, I know you have some unique challenges, especially around like accounting. Can you highlight for the audience some of those issues that you guys have at MicroStrategy?
Sure. So one of the hurdles for corporates looking to invest part of their cash into Bitcoin and take a treasury approach, the accounting currently is unfavorable. And what it means is the current accounting for digital assets, it falls under indefinite life intangibles. And not to get into the details, but what it means is if you buy certain Bitcoin at a certain price, say 50,000, if the Bitcoin drops for even 1 second to 30,000, you need to book an impairment loss on your position on the books, but you cannot mark it up until you sell the position. So if you decide not to sell the Bitcoins, you need to take up the loss, which impacts the earnings for public companies, and they cannot really mark it up. So one huge catalyst here would be, kind of different set of accounting rules for digital assets, and sort of a mark-to-market approach would be helpful. And on that front, I think FASB announced last quarter that they have added a research project to their agenda to explore newer accounting rules for digital assets. So that could be catalyst.
And FASB, for those who don't know what that is a accounting standards board that helps come up with rules on how to do accounting for publicly traded companies and other companies. So how likely do you think that is to occur? You think it's like a good chance?
I mean, currently, I think it's easier for corporates that are more like family offices, as Hani mentioned, or tech founder-based companies. It's easier for them to take this approach. But I mean, as more and more companies adopt, I think there's focus from the administration, the current administration side, to research different aspects, the regulatory aspects. So as we get more and more, regulatory certainty around things, I think there's a good chance in due time this will be addressed.
And Hani, would love to hear your thoughts on the hurdles or impediments to that institutional adoption.
I think there's several, and that's part of the problem. So you have on one side, institutions have an inability to invest except in certain wrappers, which is why we wrap crypto in all forms of various securities. Institutions need very credible research that backs all of these crypto assets out. So our research department has, in 6 different languages, very deep, high-quality, equity-level research on every one of the assets that are covered in our products. And we just launched our 30th product a couple of days ago, and so it's quite a lot, and it's a very big educational hurdle. There's a lot of the logistics, the infrastructure does not exist that is needed to bring a lot of this to market. And frankly, the institutions will most likely, invest in a lot of the products like ours because of the regulated natures of them, because they will tick the boxes on a lot of the various things that they're required to have. I think we underestimate, though, the effects of institutions when they come. We talk a lot about price. A core part of it that people may not realize is that oftentimes institutions are hodling much more than anyone on the retail side. I think MicroStrategy isn't day trading their Bitcoin, right? It's something that is very much for the long term. And we're missing this semi-permanent pool of capital in the space on the institutional side that will drive dividends. And so the hurdles make sense, but we have seen changes in sentiment. We have seen people on the other side preparing. And while they're still dipping their toes, we're now talking about huge pensions, huge insurance companies, not just family offices and tech-forward CEO-led companies.
And the audience may not understand the gravity or like what the impact would be if the institutions start to dip their foot into the water instead of their toe. What will happen when they start to put their feet in the water, once they start to dive in a little bit more? And I'll leave this open for whoever would like to answer first.
Well, let's have the institution answer.
Sure.
Yeah.
What I was going to say is that I mean we're all waiting for this. I mean this is our ultimate game. This is why we're all here. You know, we want this to start looking and feeling more like an established industry, like a new asset class. You know, and not just some offshoot. You know, where a bunch of kids are playing around with new shiny marbles. Called something else. This day. So. What I think will happen is that this industry will start looking much more mature. You will see a lot more people wearing suits, a lot more people coming from the established capital markets, and basically bringing the corporate governance policies, procedures, because again this is what institutional clients will recognize and feel more comfortable on the opposite side of the table, in board meetings and and just in boardrooms in general. There will be a lot more transparency, for sure. I think the reliability on social media will be minimized, because what happens now? Somebody just goes and tweets something, or just writes in their Medium channel, and then everybody takes it for granted and they start making investment decisions. In the real world, these kind of things, just don't work that way. I mean, there are, audited financial statements, there are audit opinions, there's legal opinions. People actually, get on the phone, with CFOs, investor relations, people, obviously with the CEOs themselves, and need to understand, whether this is some sort of a, out of the ordinary type business occurrence, or is this something that can be relied on longer term and is something that complements the strategic development of the company. So, investor calls, research reports, for sure, and as I said, a lot more reliability on data as opposed to just plain emotions and personal personal opinions.
It's absolutely happening, though. I mean, something that we're seeing, and we've been doing this for a few years. We used to have a lot of conversations about how Bitcoin will not go to zero because, and we're no longer doing that. At this moment, we're having meetings where it's very clear: crypto's inevitable, Bitcoin's inevitable, it's here to stay. And we're discussing more advanced, more interesting things. What will happen as a result of this is, besides the validation in the space, which would be magnificent, you also get a very basic supply and demand shake. There's 45 million millionaires or so in the world. There's not enough Bitcoin for every millionaire to have a whole Bitcoin, let alone the corporate sitting on a lot of cash on the sidelines. And so, the validation is incredibly important. The growing up aspect of this space is incredibly important. And all of this should be rather good if you're hodling Bitcoin or if you're an investor.
Yeah, and one thing I'd say is when you look at institutions adopting Bitcoin or investing in Bitcoin, they're not here for short term. They're here to stay invested, and this is for long run. So when you see big institutions and corporates investing, they're here to stay. At MicroStrategy, we truly embrace the ethos of Bitcoin and this conference that what we do is we have open sourced our playbook to make it easier for other corporates if they're looking to adopt Bitcoin as a part of their treasury. We have made all the documents and discussions with our vendors and some of the sessions made available. It's all open sourced now on our website, so people can use that. And we also hold annually Bitcoin for Corporations events to talk to the vendors in the industry on the latest market developments and trends. So,
how many corporates attended that event?
Means we had over 25,000 people attending and over
Wow.
hundreds of corporates.
That's incredible. And so this playbook that you guys developed, what does it kind of walk through, with the accounting team and with the investor relations team, like what they need to do to
Yeah.
bring Bitcoin on board?
Yeah, it's kind of, it lays out how should a corporate think about if they're deciding to enter. And I can walk through that. So firstly, the corporates need to identify whether they would like to take like a tech or product side of strategy or more like a finance and treasury side. I'll speak to the finance and treasury angle. And on that front, they need to first identify whether they would like to take a balance sheet strategy or more like a P&L strategy, whether they'll be buying and selling and back and forth. Our strategy is very straightforward. It's pure balance sheet strategy and long-term buy and hold. So it simplifies a lot of regulations that don't apply. We are an operating company, so we have a software business. Any excess cash generated, we sweep into Bitcoin, and then we also use our capital markets, tap capital markets in innovative ways to acquire more Bitcoin. So once the strategy is identified, I think then the next step, and the most important from a corporate perspective, is to acquire and hold their Bitcoins securely. You don't want to lose your Bitcoins,
Of course.
So then you need to identify the right exchange and custody partners. And what we have seen is there's an influx of a lot of qualified institutional grade vendors now in the market, which is adding diversity and also competition to this space. So it's evolving, and they're offering a range of solutions. So next step after identifying the custody and the exchange partners is to set up internal protocols in the corporate around legal, audit, internal, external controls, tax, compliance. So there's a lot that goes behind this. And one thing what we have found useful here is, you should leverage the right experts in the industry. Now there are a lot of, specialized experts coming in each of these verticals and use their experience, because they bring in, the experience and knowledge about what the other companies, similar companies, are doing in the space. So once that is done, then the corporates can follow. And this is all kind of laid out in a redacted version for Playbook, which is available publicly.
That's
And
fantastic.
if you think, you asked, what are the effects when the institutions are coming? Just listen to how MicroStrategy is talking about Bitcoin. They're treating it like a cash equivalent. This is the point. This is exactly why we are so excited about the incoming herd.
And Haney, this is our last question. And I'd ask that you all keep it kind of brief. We've only got a few minutes left. Haney, will Bitcoin change the institutions?
I think Bitcoin's going to change the world. I think it's a lot of the old models that we have are obviously broken. A lot of the old models that we have are obviously broken. The stock exchange being closed more hours of the day than it is open is obviously broken. No one would have built this system this way if they were building it today. Bitcoin fixes all of that. With new emerging, especially highly disruptive technologies, we often underestimate by a wide margin just how big they will get. If any of us, in 1990, tried to predict the market cap of the internet-based economy today, we would be orders of magnitude lower. And so, absolutely, it's not just going to change finance. Bitcoin, crypto, the blockchain will change everything as we know it over the next 10, 15, 20 years.
I fully agree. I believe, that this is, Bitcoin and, tokens, cryptocurrencies, especially those with finite supply, they definitely have the ability to revolutionize the way, we perceive the world, the way we transact, the way we use financial services. Of course, one thing, I have to say is that we have to do it right. I believe, that we have done our fair share, obviously. Development has been amazing, the innovation coming from the space. It holds a great promise, but we just have to figure out how not to mess it up and how to align it with the best, business practices of professionalism, transparency, and of course, ethical conduct.
What I would say is Bitcoin is forcing the institutions to unlearn their lifetime of traditional finance experience and kind of relearn and question, what is money, how is traditional finance, how does that work, what is, it's all this ethos around like ecosystem around Bitcoin and traditional finance, like how are they all coming together? And it kind of requires them to relearn everything.
Bitcoin does indeed fix this. It fixes a lot of these problems that we have. And wanted to say thank you. Let's give a round of applause to our panelists. Really appreciate the in-depth conversation. Loved having you all, and thank you all for attending.
Thank you all for attending.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dan.
Hello, Bitcoin Conference 2022. I'm Gil Beverly, Chief Marketing and Revenue Officer for the back-to-back AFC South champion Tennessee Titans. The Titans in our home Nissan Stadium are proud to announce that we'll be accepting Bitcoin in 2022. Our fans are our top priority, and we've received numerous requests for Bitcoin as a payment option. So we're excited to make it happen and to further engage the Bitcoin community and our Titans fan base. Now, it's not for everything yet, but we'll be accepting Bitcoin for season tickets, PSLs, suites, and sponsorships. And who knows, maybe someday soon we'll go stadium-wide in the future, covering everything from concessions to the Titans team store. We'd like to thank our friends and partners at BTC Media for the advisement and direction on this venture. David Bailey and his team are Bitcoin legends, and we're proud to work with our BTC neighbors from Nashville. All Bitcoin transactions will run through a third-party conversion service, and we'll share more details on that down the road. So keep an eye out on TennesseeTitans.com and our various Titans social media channels for more information. We believe this is an NFL first, and we are excited to blaze this trail with the Bitcoin community. Let's go. And as always, tighten up.
Welcome back. We're here at the Marathon News Desk at Bitcoin 2022 Industry Day, presented by Bitcoin Magazine. Once again, I'm Pete Rizzo, editor at Bitcoin Magazine, and joined by returning special guest Mark Moss, our author of the Uncommunist Manifesto, joined by new special guests for this final wrap-up panel of the day, Guy Swan, host of Bitcoin Audible, and Marty Bent, founder, TFTC. If you're still watching, thank you. Like, subscribe, smash that button.
Smash it.
We're going to be breaking down today's announcements in their entirety. Thank you for those who watched the full Bitcoin 2022 Industry Day. Let's just dig in. A lot happened here, right? Full round of recap coming up now. First up, I want to lead with, I think, what we agree is the big news. El Salvador President Nayib Bukele has canceled his appearance at Bitcoin 2022 due to, quote, unforeseen issues in his country, shares a letter to the attendees. I'm going to quote from his letter here. A lot has happened since the last conference, and it was my sincere hope to celebrate our collective victories with another announcement. Alas, this could not be. I have just made the hard decision of canceling my participation in the conference due to unforeseen circumstances in my home country that require my full-time presence as president of a nation. Let's throw it over to the table. Reactions, obviously, big expectations on this announcement. Mark, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, last year his announcement rocked the entire Bitcoin conference, the entire world, Bitcoin world, and the world. It rocked the IMF's world as well, for sure. And so I was expecting another really big announcement. I was really looking forward to seeing what he was going to bring. You know, El Salvador is super important for the Bitcoin community, you know, for the world. And one thing I'm afraid of is if it's left out there alone for too long, it starts getting dangerous. We need some more people behind it. I was hoping we'd see that. But we know there's a lot of problems. The IMF is attacking El Salvador. Obviously, they don't like that. But internally, there's struggles. Recently, he had to do some, you know, lockdowns in his own country. It probably doesn't look good leaving your country when you've locked it down. I'm guessing there's something there. Either way, I'm disappointed about it.
Yeah, not political analyst here, but certainly can speak to the Bitcoin angle. Marty, would love your take. What does this mean to the community who is watching, eagerly anticipating more nation-state Bitcoin adoption?
I mean, him pulling out does not mean that more nation-state adoption is not going to happen.
Wow.
Right.
He is. It's the same nation. He already. They already did this.
Okay.
Yeah, he already did it.
What? Just because he's not here, other nation-states have to hold back? I
Everybody's
don't
like,
think so.
damn it.
I'm
don't think
commenting
so.
on the sentiment. I don't think it's a secret that, you know, the people in the replies are clamoring for nation-state Bitcoin adoption. They wanted to hear Nayib Bukele announce another country accepting Bitcoin.
Oh, does he have to be the one to announce it?
I don't
You
know.
what?
Right, the other country would announce it, right?
Yeah,
So.
yeah.
Was he still gonna? Was he? Do you think he was gonna announce like kind of the participation in the Bitcoin bond potentially?
I don't know. I
Like,
mean, there was certainly a lot of speculation. He has the Bitcoin
I
bond
wonder if
going on.
That's even. I don't know. The Bitcoin bond seems.
There's been delays.
They delayed
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also been I'll throw it out there. The U.S. Congress passing bills aimed at El Salvador.
Yeah, what was her name from
scrutiny.
California?
Can't remember.
Why can you even write that bill? Like, why do we care about
When
El
did they
Salvador
ever care
adopting
about El
Bitcoin?
Salvador?
Well, it's for your protection and your safety.
Do you guys think there's a possibility that it's U.S. regulatory pressure at play here?
Not allowing him to come into the United States? I don't know, but I would guess probably not.
There's a decent the fact that emergency powers have just been taken by the government and all the gang murders and everything are going on. I don't know. That seems like a sufficient enough explanation,
Yeah.
Like if I was in the position, I certainly it would seem like a very dumb idea to be like, oh yeah, lock down, and now we've got
I'm gonna go to Miami.
all
Now I'm
these
taking a
restrictions.
holiday.
I'm gonna go to Miami and stand in front of a volcano.
But it did mean a lot for him to be here, right, Mark?
did.
You touched on that. This is somebody who's become important for the Bitcoin community because he seems to really get it, Marty.
He does, but I'm guessing, Bitcoin's important, but his country first.
Yeah,
Sure.
country first. You're the president. You got to be there. Bitcoin has no heroes. He's a great ambassador, but hey, whatever country's going to announce it, they could step
So,
up and say it themselves.
We'll go around bullish or bearish. We'll do a one word. Where are you guys on Bukele pulling out of Bitcoin 2022?
neutral.
Now.
Sorry, guy. What would you say?
Pulling out is wise in this
So you're
decision, as
neutral.
it is
You're
most
neutral.
times.
Okay, we got Marty's officially neutral guy.
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with neutral. Although I think a big announcement might have been riled up the hardcore Bitcoiners. I think overall it's neutral.
All right, moving on to our next subject. We had Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful of Shark Tank fame, on the main stage earlier, appealing to U.S. politicians in Washington for Bitcoin and crypto regulation. His statement: "There's billions of dollars waiting for policy. Let's not lose U.S. competitiveness. Let the private market develop stablecoins. Bitcoin mining is good for the earth." Those were his messaging, alongside an appeal to bipartisanship, thanking President Joe Biden for not making Bitcoin illegal at one point, suggesting that we should use carbon offsets to offset the Bitcoin mining and its energy concerns, making stablecoins legal, U.S. dollar keeping its reserve status. A lot of topics to unpack there. Mark, what's your highlight?
Well, I mean, he's contradicting himself here back and forth, right? And it's just absurd. So on one hand, he says, hey, stablecoins, we should make them legal. On the other hand, hey, Biden, thank you for not making Bitcoin illegal. So which one is it? I mean, I believe that we're in a free country and we don't have to ask for permission. The government is supposed to the Constitution is supposed to limit their role and protect our freedom. And so everything is legal until we have to then ask, until we have to defend ourselves. So it's kind of like the ask for forgiveness, not for permission sort of thing. If we go into a situation where we have to ask for permission before we do everything from a nanny state, that is a bad precedent to take. He's making contradictory statements here. Overall, it's absurd.
But he is speaking for an institutional crowd. Is there any legitimacy to these? What sticks out for you, Marty?
Well, similar to the U.S. representatives not having any place to speak about El Salvador policy, I don't think we should have a Canadian come down and tell the U.S. president what to do. Carbon credits are a scam. Bitcoin mining is good for the environment. It uses wasted energy. Again, Kevin O'Leary trying to be another figurehead. He's a blowhard, in my opinion.
Well, this is a market change from last year where he came in really stressing the ESG climate narrative. We've seen obviously a big turn in that. Guy, wondering if that's something you can speak to.
Good Lord. The whole carbon offsets and the ESG thing, I don't know. I feel like the narrative is breaking apart a little bit. And maybe it's just because I hang out with Bitcoiners. But
probably.
And it's also because you're smart.
It does seem like we've kind of reached the peak of that, and basically the momentum is starting to ease off because it's fueled so many scams and it's fueled so much nonsense for the sake of just appearing like it's clearly virtue signaling investment. And I really think when you kind of reach the end stage of the fiat game and the debt bubble, I think these things are going to start blowing up. It's like all the billionaire unicorn companies. Like at some point, you just find out they're not making any money.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we're kind of finding our way to, especially in this era with Ukraine and Russia and sanctions and oil shortages. We're going to find out that this was a terrible decision.
Yeah.
This was stupid. This made our entire grid insecure, our energy unreliable. And at the end of the day, when the lights go off, nobody's going to give a shit whether it was ESG approved or not.
Right.
Yeah. And the carbon credit specifically, I mean, it's an asinine idea on its face. You're not eliminating carbon at all. You're just pushing it somewhere else.
You're just creating a token to sell.
Yeah.
You're just creating a shitcoin.
And with ESG, even more broadly, again, I've been saying this a lot, but ESG doesn't make sense on its face because you're trying to create a metric system for amorphous values that differ between individuals, industries, countries, religious backgrounds, whatever it may be.
Well, let's stick with stablecoins.
I want to just add one more piece onto this. So you talked about the pivot. So O'Leary had just come into this space hot.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people trying to make a name for himself, and we need to change it. So like, hey, Bitcoin's great. But if we could just
fix it.
If we could just fix it, right? And so what we need to do is we need to mine on clean energy. So I'll only buy Bitcoin if it was marked as clean. So then he tried to come in and change this whole mining thing. We saw Elon Musk get into that whole thing, right? And now a year later, he's like, oh, Bitcoin mining is good for the world. So like, look at that pivot. So he tried to come in and change it, realized that Bitcoin can't be changed, and now he's pivoted going, oh, no, it's good.
But there is the introduction of the conversation about stablecoins, and I don't mean to pivot here, but UK came out, introduced friendly crypto framework, but it was all around stablecoins. It seems like O'Leary might be making a similar play here, saying U.S. politicians, let's use this as a way to boost the dollar.
I mean, stablecoins are already a thing in the United States.
They're already legal.
Circle has a stablecoin. Tether, people use Tether in the U.S.
Well, he said, quote, we need to make stablecoins legal, right?
But they are legal.
It doesn't make any sense. Like, just back to what Mark was saying is that, like, the Constitution isn't about, like, detailing out the things that are legal. It's detailing out explicitly what the federal government has any authority over. And it doesn't fall under that. Like, I mean, a stablecoin is basically a digital banknote. Like, that's what we had in traditional banking before everything went to just denominating as a U.S. debt. It used to be a bank debt. You had a bank note that was related to your bank back in the late 1800s and early 1900s. It was literally a bank note. You had, a silver note or a gold note backed by the bank. So you actually could interchange them based on their value of the reserve of the bank. And if one failed, their banknotes failed, not everybody's.
What do you guys think about the general sentiment here, right? Let's just wipe away the details and the specifics. This call for bipartisan action, for it, against it. What's your take?
I mean,
for. But it's.
I think we should go back to traditional banking. I think that would be good. But a lot of a lot of the foundational pieces have to change for it.
I also do worry about overregulation. Like, we shouldn't be giving the reins of.
Was now even the right time
what to do? No, I don't think so.
I'm generally in favor of the government doing less.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just leave us alone.
Just leave it alone.
Kevin O'Leary's appeal to Washington. We'll do the rundown again, bullish or bearish. What do you guys think?
Bearish, because Kevin O'Leary is part of it.
I'd say probably just on the face, probably bullish. Not bullish in probably the right way that I would prefer.
This is a binary question. You guys are really
nonetheless bullish.
It's bullish in the short term because it brings more attention and more people in, but it's bearish in the long term because he's proposing more regulations, which are going to harm the progress.
Moving on to our next topic, those who stuck with us really early today, first thing in the morning, would have seen Miami Mayor Francis Suarez made a name for himself as being pro-crypto, articulating a vision for Bitcoin America 2024, saying we need to integrate Bitcoin into every aspect of our society. Pull quote that got a lot of play: we need to make sure you go to a convenience store and buy a Snickers with Satoshis. Saying the purchasing power of fiat currency is being diminished, the poor are being left behind. Bitcoin has been a factor for good, and the next president should support Bitcoin. What do you guys think about that news?
I don't think we need a president to support it. We just need merchants to download BTC Pay Server and start accepting it. It's very easy. We need Square to turn on Bitcoin in their POS systems. That would be massive. We don't need a president to say.
So private sector movement.
If Square went and said, all right, now you can pay via Cash App, you can pay via Tap to Touch, and you can pay via Bitcoin. I think that would be massive for what Mayor Suarez wants to bring to fruition.
I'm curious who the first president was that had an email address. And if anybody cared.
Good
Might
point.
have been Bill Clinton, right?
Maybe.
Good point.
Yeah.
I think there was like a thing about that.
Well, and nobody should care, but back to Mr. O'Leary saying, hey, please legalize it for us, right? I have some inside information because I was hanging out with Mayor Suarez last night. And he said that
that's what you get if you're at Bitcoin.
He said that it was going to be DeSantis in the White House in 2024. So does this mean that DeSantis is actually a Bitcoiner already?
Interesting. So you said that you think this could mean something for the political environment, even portraying a run in 2024.
Maybe. I mean, imagine if a president. We know there's probably what about 50 million Americans that are Bitcoiners now.
Presidential memes around the halving. Can you imagine?
Oh my God.
Unbelievable bullishness. There.
Hey, we
gonna be
undershot
so
on the
great.
last halving cycle. Maybe the next one overshoots, right?
Meme factory is gonna go nuts.
All right, guys, what do you think about this? We're going to do a final round here, bullish or bearish. Before we wrap it up with Francis Suarez, what do you guys think about this idea of the next president being for Bitcoin or having Bitcoin as part of the platform?
I mean, it's bullish, but the president's going to need to own Bitcoin because the dollar is inflating at such a, like, it's just natural. Everybody's going to be a Bitcoiner at the end of the day, including the president.
Natural progression. Guy, your take.
Bullish.
Okay, fair enough.
I would say bullish.
A Bitcoin president, you heard it here first. Thank you for joining in this news recap. And we appreciate you sticking around for the whole live stream, everybody on YouTube and on Rumble. If you're still around, go to bitcoinmagazine.com/store. You can pick up a new Bitcoin magazine, the 2 to the Moon issue, now on newsstands in Barnes & Noble. And we'll be back again tomorrow, starting bright and early at 8 a.m., back for Bitcoin 2022 and the official kickoff. I'd like to thank Marty. I'd like to thank Guy. I'd like to thank Mark. I'd like to thank the entire crew and the city of Miami, which will be having us back for another 3 days. Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you.